Hello there everyone, Inky Fingers here from Inky Fingers Architectural Art. Now today, as we can see by our reference photograph, I'm going to be painting a full street scene of York. But the thing is, with this street scene, I'm going to be using only 3 colours. Can we paint something like this in only 3 colours? I think we can. It all depends on the colours we use. Now what colours am I going to use? Well, I'm going to be using these colours here. I'm going to be using ultramarine blue, raw sienna and burnt sienna. And when you make a little colour chart of these colours, you can see you get a nice range of earthy, duller colours. There's nothing very bright here, but it doesn't need to be for this type of scene. So we can see we've got our nice pure blue, there's a pure raw sienna and a pure burnt sienna. But mixing them together, we can see we've got some ultramarine mixed in with some burnt sienna. We can have some nice dark areas. The more blue we put into this, the darker it becomes. So we can get some nice sort of blacky type colours. We have burnt sienna mixed with ultramarine blue. We can get some nice browns. Burnt sienna with raw sienna. We get some really nice old type of brickwork, and then raw sienna with ultramarine. We get this really nice sort of subdued, dull, earthy green colour. And ultramarine, then mixed with some raw sienna. We get the same sort of colour, but we can get it darker if we need to be. Now, if you look back at the picture, let's see what colours we can have. Okay, in the sky we can have, of course, ultramarine blue. We got some dark clouds, so we could use ultramarine with burnt sienna. The centerpiece of this picture here is obviously we could raw sienna, but around it it's got it's sort of a grey green colour here and there, which of course we've got exactly that colour either there or there we can use. So that's sorted. We've got a road, that's a greyish colour. Again, we just use our ultramarine and burnt sienna in various mixes. We can get various types of grey. And then we have our brickwork, which we can see is just because it's York, they're old buildings. We've got some oldish type of brickwork. So we have some of this colour here, the burnt sienna and raw sienna put together for these type of brickworks. Then we could add a little bit of ultramarine blue in, and that would darken it up, dirty it up, so then we can have our dirtier colour bricks. And if we wanted something a little bit more cleaner, like for example down here, then we can have a little bit of burnt sienna on its own, or a mixture of any of these colours. But I think you'll find that this very limited palette will be able to paint this scene, no problems. Now, as you can see, I've drawn it out and I've inked it in. I inked it in again with some black India ink and just a tiny mapping type Dippin' steel nibbed ink pen. And I use that just because you can put pressure on and get some thicker lines, some thinner lines, so it's a little bit more organic looking than using just a fountain pen or something like that, or a fine liner. So the drawing and the inking stage took about maybe 45 minutes to an hour, but we need to get this painted in. So let's get down to this and see what happens. Oh yes, I nearly forgot. The paper I'm using is just a piece of Bockingford. Because it's not cotton paper, it's a lot more hard sized. I'm also using some Winsor & Newton Oxgall liquid. 4 drops of this into the water. It's about a cup of water in there, and it makes the water wetter, as it says on the instructions. But what it'll do, it'll sort of break up the surface tension of the paper, and the paint will flow a little bit more easier. Because on Bockingford and any other non-cotton paper, it can pool. You can have problems. This can cure a lot of those problems. Now before I put these first washes onto this picture, what I will say is this is not going to be a detailed picture. For example, the brickwork is not really going to be showing individual bricks as such. It's going to be much more impressionistic. I have done videos like this in the past of called how to paint brickwork without actually painting any bricks, and this is the method I'm going to be using. It's all smoke and mirrors. It'll look like old brickwork, but we're not actually really going to be putting bricks in. So the first thing we need to do, of course, with this is we'll put a sky in. So I'm just going to, on this, I'm going to dampen this paper off. I'm not putting any masking fluid on this. I could to go carefully go around these towers. It would make it easier, but I think we can actually do this without masking fluid. So I'm just going to put this, wet the area, and then just wait just a tad, just so it dries a little bit, and the sheen, you probably won't be able to see the sheen on looking directly down at the camera, but if you look just to the left or the right of it in the light, you can see it's quite glossy looking. So we need to get this a little bit more matte looking on the paper, and then it would be good to go just to put a simple sky in. So this has been about a minute. You can see it's starting to dry off. I've mixed some French ultramarine and a touch of burnt sienna just to knock the bright artificial colour down, which French ultramarine is. So it's just going to make it a little bit more, slightly more stormy looking, I suppose. And I can just paint around the towers. I'm just going to get a little bit of the raw sienna and just drop it in the bottom of the sky, like so. Just so we haven't got blue all the way down. You know, I may put a little bit of this just in there, just to make it appear like there might be some little clouds, because we know it's going to dry much lighter. Now while the sky is drying, we can't really touch any of this for obvious reasons, but we can touch the bottom bit. And as say for example the road, it is just a greyish colour, so we can use really what we had for the sky, and we can put a little bit more burnt sienna in, and then let's see what we've got. Which, here we go, we have this really nice sort of greyish road asphalt type colour just by using our two colours. But I'll just leave like that. A few little dry brushy type areas here. Aye, that's quite nice. And then we have our little piece of pavement. Now it's raw, basically raw sienna. So we'll put some raw sienna in here. Of course, it's just dirtied up a little bit because of the other colours, which is okay, so we don't really need it. That's drawn, and I'm just going to nice and dilute and pull it out like so. And I think we've got pretty much the same for the other side of the street. So I'm not being particularly bothered about how it looks, and that will do for that. Right, we're all pretty much all dry now, so we can now put a wash over the tower. Now I've mixed up 3 little pools of colour here. I've mixed up, this is just raw sienna and a touch of ultramarine. There's a lot of water. This is raw sienna with a lot more ultramarine in it, and that's going to give us this sort of dirty mossy colour, which we can see this will be these dirty colours here and there. And I've also mixed up raw sienna with a touch of burnt sienna, and that's just going to make a more reddish type of colour. And I'm just going to put it here and there. It's not really that much of anything of that colour, but it'll just sort of marry it up a little bit. So this is what I'm going to do, and with this I'm just going to use a smallish brush, number 5 round. So just looking at the photograph, the dirtier parts of the greenier parts are more at the top. It gets cleaner as we go down. So I'm just going to put, I'm not really looking too much at the photograph, because this is just an artistic rendition, of course. So I'm just going to put this around here like so. You see it is lighter at the bottom, so I'm going to go into this, the raw sienna mix with the burnt sienna, and I'll just drop that here and there, just so we've got a mishmash of colour basically. Back into the more of the raw sienna type mix. Now it's still quite light up here, around here. You've got some lighter areas up here, but not much. And then I'm going to go into this dirty, lovely dirty mucky mix, which I love this colour. And then just drop that in here and there. Ooh, that's a lot, isn't it? When we say gonna drop it in, that's what we mean. And I think that will do. Now, as I always do when you do something like this, I demonstrated it last week. We can get our little rag, toilet roll, kitchen roll, anything you like, but you got to make sure that you don't have it like that. Because if you dab like that, then you just get this flat end, and you're just going to get these unnatural flat areas. So you've also always got to just pull a bit off and try and fluff it around a bit, so it's a bit more organic. And then just here and there, varying the pressure, take some off. There you go, it's got wet now, so we've got to rip a bit more off, and then just dab here and there, and hopefully you can see on the camera that it's becoming a little bit more patchy here and there, and it looks like we're getting little bits of ancient texture, weathering. Of course we will put another coat on over this, so there was something like that. So we've got this sort of slightly patchy, and of course it makes it, because we've taken the excess water off, it dries quicker. But now we need to do that with that part, this little bridge, and this little bridge part here. Right, as you can see, I've now just put the 2 bridges in. So now we can play around with the brickwork. Now, as I said, the brickwork is we're not going to be really showing bricks. We're going to be simulating bricks. So we need the brick colours first. So what we'll do here is we're going to have some burnt sienna. Lovely colour, but far too orangey for this what we need. So I'm going to put a tiny little bit of burnt French ultramarine in, and as you can see, it just makes it into a nice, more of a dirty brick kind of colour. I'll make another pooler colour, and that's going to be ultramarine blue with some burnt sienna, and that's going to make this really dark sort of burnt brick type of colour. So that'll do for that, and then we'll make another burnt raw sienna, pretty much. We have just have raw sienna on its own, and then just going down a size. This is now a number 4 round. You know what, we will have a little bit of burnt sienna on its own. All we need to do with a small brush is to paint in where the bricks are going to be. Now, and then I'm going to get a little bit of rag and just tap a little bit of this out just to make it a little bit patchy, like so. And then moving over to an even smaller brush. This is like a very number 1, very small. I'm going to go into this dark mix, the ultramarine and burnt sienna, and then not too much on the brush, and then I'm just going to drop some of this in, just to make it look like we could have some darker bricks here and there. Now I'm going into this other colour. I'll drop that in. We can have a touch of water, as I always do. Put the brush in some water and then just drop that on, and then just tickle it around with the tip of the brush, just so it dilutes some of it, while other parts are more got more strength. And then we'll do just pull it out a little bit. I'm not going everywhere because I want to go into this raw sienna, because I want to leave some gaps so I can drop other colours in. Now we'll go into this dark colour, just drop it in like so, just tickle it around with the tip of the brush as always. So we get a bit of a mishmash of colour. Take out a little bit of rag and then just gently, very gently, hardly any pressure here and there, just to make it look, again, it gives it a little bit of fading, so it looks a bit more ancient. Then all we do is the same thing, back to the bigger brush because we've got a larger area now, and we'll just put that on there. That goes around the corner to the window frame. So we go into the raw sienna, drop some of the raw sienna in, and then as we're using the tip of the brush, you can see that we're leaving little bits of the white paper underneath. Most of it by accident, some of it is intentional, but what this is, now this is a lighter colour brick, so it's basically we've painted a negative brick. But what we've done is we've painted these bricks in the perspective of the wall, so you can see the sort of going from maybe it's about 4 o'clock to 10 o'clock position, just to make it look right. Then as ever, our little bit of rag, make sure it's fluffy, and then just here and there just tap certain parts out so it looks like we've got some fading, and it makes it look a little bit older. Now, just looking like this, it looks quite like an old brick wall, and we haven't even put any bricks in yet. So that's that. What we need to do is do the same thing with this. So it's the same effect. It's just that the bricks are a little bit more raw sienna-ish. But I'll do this and then I'll be back. So I've put the brickwork in here, exactly the same method I used here. But I've just used the ultramarine with a touch of light red, the same mix I used for the sky, and I've just put a first coat of the black painted areas on the pub itself. But we do have these areas here. Now this, as you can see, is it's red brick. That's red brick with some other details in, but for these I'm not going to, because I'm on the background, I'm not going to put any detailing in. I'm just going to make these a silhouette, a shadow colour. So a shadow colour in this case would have to be, of course, French ultramarine, because that's the darkest predominant colour first, and we want a dark colour, so it's going to have to be ultramarine first. Then we shall have some burnt sienna, and that is going to make a really nice sort of bluey grey colour. Or in the artistic world is the acronym FUBS. We're going to mix up a FUBS, and that means FU, French ultramarine, BS, burnt sienna. So if anyone says I've mixed up FUBS, a FUBS mixture, that's what it is. And this mixture, all I'm going to do now is paint in this house here as a silhouette. And that will just keep it into the distance. I'm going to do the same with this. I'm going to do that in there like so. Now this bit might look a little bit strange because it just looks, it's just a dark area in this shadow bit. So I may, when that's dry, I may just put a touch of overlay, a touch of burnt sienna, just on the, just maybe around here, and that just to make it look like it's a bit of brickwork there. But apart from that, that's all that's going to be. Right, now what we can do, because this is all dry, we're going to start and put a little bit of detailing into this this tower, and that's going to be this dirty colour, this greenish colour, and we'll just put here and there this colour on the tower. Now, again with the smallest brush, this tiny little number 1 nylon, synthetic brush. Why this? Because, well, it's small, and because it's synthetic, it doesn't hold that much water, so we can't flood the area out. We've got to be a little bit more precise at this. So all I'm going to do is what I always do. You've seen me do this in other videos. Is I'm going to just put a little bit of paint, quite blobby. It has to be blobby. As you can see, it's slightly raised off the surface there, and then into the water, drop that on, and then just pull it around. You can see it, the water just absorbs into the paint, and just pull it around a little bit. Just to give that sort of stain. We've got some around here on these turrets. A little bit there. I'm looking at the photograph just so I can have some sort of indication of where I want it. Now in the water, drop it on, You see it drop on, and then just tickle it around the very tip of the brush. Makes it look all sort of watery and watercolory. And any little bits like this, where that's some of the underwash, leave them, because that adds a little bit of sharpness. Same with this. So we put a little bit on. It's a bit blobby, so we'll just take that off a little bit. Then we'll put a little bit on the side there. Just pull it out a little bit. Maybe it's a bit there. So I've left lots of gaps here. The reason, of course, you leave lots of gaps, so when you drop the water on, it gives this greyish green paint somewhere to actually flood into. Okay, so that's that. And then, of course, get our little rag once again. Just a tiny area, rip it up, and then just here and there. You really need a tiny little rag. Just here and there. Just give a little tap. Just to make it a little bit more patchy here and there. And to make it look like it's got a bit of age to it. And if you look at the photograph, we can see what we've done. It's dark there. We will do this again on when this is all dry, just to darken up these areas. We've got some along the edge there, which you can see. There's a lot on there, just needs to be darkened up, as I said. It's dark under here, and little bits and bobs here and there. So that's what I'm going to do, exactly the same way I've done this. So when I've done this, I've covered it all, I'll be back. I've just completed the tower, so it's a lot more colourful, and it's a lot more patchy. But the real dark areas are still not on as of yet. That will come later. But we now have the foundation of all these the colours and the tones to make it look like it's old. And what I'll do with exactly the same colour paint I've just used to do this, we can paint in the pavement. Ours is pretty much very, very similar. So I'll just do a little bit. So this is our raw sienna mix. And so I'll just put it on like so. Drop some of the water on, tap it around, pull it around, and then we'll get a little bit of this darker colour here and there. That darker colour can go up near the building because it is darker naturally. So I'll just put that, a little bit of blue in just to darken it up a bit more. Pull it out, water on, so to pull that out a bit, back in to the light, drop that in, in the water, drop it on, just tickle it. Again, just so parts are diluted, parts are more stronger. Step in that really strong colour. So all the colours I've just previously used in the picture, I'm not mixing anything else up. That was this colour. It was the blue and the red. Perhaps if you can try a little bit brushing the water and just a little bit of splattering with the clean water, just to give a few little cauliflowers if we can, and that's just going to give a little bit more texture. I can't actually see if it's going on, I think it is, and that just gives a nice little bit of colour and texture within that. And once again, if you really think you want to do it, it's a bit like a broken record, I know, but get your little rag, put it the size you want, we don't need it large, and we'll just dab here and there very, very gingerly if you want a little bit more patchiness. And I'm going to do exactly the same with this path here. Now what I'll do is I'm going to strengthen up these dark areas of the basically black painted woodwork. So I've just mixed up some ultramarine blue and light red. That's the only colours we can mix up. And as you can see, you can get a really, really nice black, or a dark colour. We won't call it black. So now while all this is drying, and we've just mixed up some nice grey, I'm just going to try and put a little bit of detailing, texturing into this road. Now I'm going to try a little bit dry brush, but granted this is Bockingford. It is rough, but even Bockingford rough is more like a knot. It just doesn't really have much of a grain. So this, I don't think this is going to be really brilliant, but I will try and get a few little dry brush marks going in the direction, of course, of the road. It's curving around and upwards. And what I'll try is a little bit of splatter, clean water, just to get a little bit of cauliflowering and texture. And then go into this dark. Now I'm going to have to watch it here, so I shall just try and protect it a little bit and just do a little bit of splattering with this dark paint, something like that. Might even go into this bit of this raw sienna. Yeah, just to give a lot of texture. You know, this is going to dry off lighter. Now while that's drying, this is all dry, so I can now mix up a strong mix of raw sienna and French ultramarine to give that really sort of dirty greeny grey look. And then I can go and really put the dark areas into the tower. And that I will do exactly the same way as what I've done before. This time it's just really with really dark, much darker paint. But technically it's the same procedure. Just put it where you want, a little bit of water, drop it on, and then just pull it around so you get that sort of watercolory type of effect. And any little gaps like that, negative spaces, well, they could be bits of brick, stone in this case. And we've got some here, so you just do this, put it on, perhaps a little bit down here, a little bit down there. I am looking at the photograph. Maybe there's a little bit there in the water. Drop it on and then just pull it around. I feel like leaving some little lighter areas underneath. And It's the same thing, but I'm just going to go over the building again, just doing that, darkening it up, and then I'll be back. Right, so now all of this is dry. I'm going to go in and I'm going to put a few final details into the brickwork because it's a little bit too nice looking at the moment. So we've got really all the colours we need here, these sort of dirty brick colours, and with a small brush all I'm going to do is simply, I'll do it on here, just paint a few marks. Same technique, drop a bit of water on and pull it around, but pulling it around at that angle to match the perspective of the building. We put a little mark there, a little one there, something there. Drop a bit of the water on. Just let the water do its own thing. You're just creating a little bit of texture with the water and the tip of the brush by sort of manipulating the paint around in the water around into the paint, and that gives us the impression of it's a lot of brick in the wall, but we haven't actually painted a single brick. Like I said, it's just smoke and mirrors. So I'll continue with this part, maybe a touch on this end of the part of the building on this side of the road, and I'll be back. Right, I'm back and I've done a few things. One, I've put a few more little tones on the tower, so it's a touch more patchy, a little bit more nicer to look at. So I've put in the some texture of bricks, but not painting bricks, on that building and continued on this building. I've put in the hanging baskets. That's just raw sienna and burnt sienna. I've just put some tones onto the pavement just to warm it up, mainly burnt sienna and raw sienna again. I've put a little bit more dry brush onto the road. I've painted in the black pub sign and put the windows in. Well, we do need to put a little bit, I think just a touch of texture in the form of splattering on the tower. Not much, just something that when you step back at the required distance to look at it, you will see that there's something there. So that's what I'll do now. Now we've protected the paper, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to try and use an old oil painting brush, as this has got stiff bristles, so you should get some nice textures. A little bit of paint, and then very subtle. We'll be brave. We'll go into a bit of dark. We'll just take the excess off. Now we can go a little bit overboard with this, so just a little bit more, and that's it. We'll take this off, and now we can see that it's got a nice little bit of granulation, I suppose. It speckles it. It just looks more old. Now the next thing to do, there's only a couple of things to do left, is we need some shadows. Now on the photograph, of course, there is pretty overcast. There isn't any shadows, but we need the shadows to make it standard, to make it more sunny. Now the problem is where do we put the shadows? Now we could put the sun in this general direction and have all of this here in shadow. So all of this on the left hand side is going to be in sunlight. This would be in shadow. You got shadows going on the ground, but that might be a little bit too much. Otherwise you could do it the other way. You could put the sun down here, so all this will be in shadow and all this area is going to be in sunlight, but that's going to make an awful lot of dark there. So I think what we'll have to do is move the sun around a bit so it's coming down from this angle. So this is going to be in sunlight, that's going to be in sunlight. We can have a shadow going across there from this part of the building, and because this is recessed here, we can have shadow coming from that going up, so it'll still give it a little bit of definition. So to do this, I've just mixed up a big wash of ultramarine and light red to give a nice sort of dark colour. So we'll paint this under here. Now if you look at this part of the building, obviously this part is going to be the same, so we're going to have that recess, so we'll have that little bit of dark going down there. And now the sun is up in the angle, so we're going to have, I think, that part also in shadow. We'll have a little bit under there, a little bit under there. Anything that's sort of slightly raised. Now all of this under here, I think it's going to be in shade. So now that lightens it up already. I think we're going to have a little bit of this is going to be in shade, because this is again round, it goes around, so it will have some shadow. But what we're going to have to do with this is just dampen this part off so it is soft, to make it look like it's going around the corner. Basically this is going to be the same, because that's still sort of round, and then we're going to have all of this in shade because of the tower. That's going to go like that. This is going to be under shadow here. We'll put some shading under there like so. And what we can do, we can put a little bit of shade in here, because obviously this building's going around, so that is just some sort of building casting a shadow on there, which gives it a little bit of interest. Now we put a little bit of shading on there. I suppose this is recessed, so we'll put this in shade. Now the shadows are in, what I need to do is to go in with this will be a Unipin fine liner, a 0.05, so it's very thin, and I need to just put the hint of some little stone blocks. Now this isn't going to be everywhere, it's just going to be here and there. So now this pen is just about run out. which is quite nice because it just gives like very faint lines. So it's just going to be a little, there's a block, there's a block, there's a block. Now if you look at these from like a distance, chances are you're not even going to see them. Or you might see there's something there, but this is going to be so indistinct, which is basically what you want. I've just finished the picture off by, as I said, just putting a few very light blocks, stone blocks in with that very fine liner pen. I've put, just using a white gel pen, I've put the sign in. I've just gone over with the fine liner a few little bits and bobs around on the pavement, and just a few little other bits and bobs, very minor, but just to finish it off. So let's just have a quick look at what it looks like without the masking tape. And that's it. We have, because we've used just 3 colours, and the more dull earthy type of colours, French ultramarine, raw sienna and burnt sienna, we get quite a more subdued type of picture. Still very colourful, but they're not bright colours as if we used a different red, a different blue, or a different yellow. But for this type of scene, that works very well. It gives the impression of maybe perhaps a late summer's day. The sun is just starting to set, and the earth colours give that sort of nice warm glow. So I say, why don't you try doing something like this and only using 3 colours, 3 primaries, and see what you come up with. You might choose, instead of raw sienna, you might choose yellow ochre, which is an overall brighter colour anyway, so it'll give more of a glow to the picture. You might use a light red instead of burnt sienna. It's a more of a light red, as its name implies. So again, that will give slightly different colours. But I think it's a really good exercise, and it's really fun to do, to just use a 3 colour palette. So I hope you enjoyed this little demonstration of using a 3 colour palette to paint an entire street scene. If you'd like to see more of this type of thing, then tell me what you would like in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed and you like this type of thing, then I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe, and you'll see more of this type of scene. So until next time, I say goodbye. So goodbye.